Throughout history, the movement and migration of peoples have shaped the world as we know it. Among the most significant and debated journeys is that of the ancient Israelites, particularly following the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE. The fall of the Temple, a pivotal event in Jewish history, marked not only the end of a central place of worship, but also the dispersal of a nation. For centuries, scholars, historians, and communities have sought to trace the paths taken by the Israelites after this cataclysmic event. While much of the mainstream narrative has focused on migrations into Europe, a closer examination of history, geography, and cultural ties reveals that a significant number of Israelites fled southward, seeking refuge across the vast and diverse continent of Africa.
To understand this journey, one must first appreciate the gravity of the fall of the Second Temple. Jerusalem, under siege by the Roman Empire, endured months of starvation, violence, and desperation. When the Roman legions finally breached the city walls, the destruction was thorough and merciless. The Temple, the spiritual and communal heart of the Jewish people, was razed, and the city's population was decimated or enslaved. In the wake of such devastation, survival demanded escape. The people of Jerusalem and the surrounding Judean countryside faced a choice: surrender to captivity under Roman rule, or risk everything in flight. In the chaos that followed, many Israelites did indeed scatter in various directions. Some were taken northward into slavery and exile within the Roman Empire, eventually settling in parts of Europe. But this was only part of the story. The lands to the south and west, Egypt and the broader regions of North and Sub-Saharan Africa, offered another route, one shaped by both historical precedent and geographic proximity. For centuries prior to the Temple's fall, there had been extensive contact between the Israelites and the peoples of Africa. Egypt, in particular, was a well-trodden land for the Israelites, dating back to the time of Abraham, Joseph, and Moses. The Nile Delta and the cities along the Mediterranean were familiar territories, and trade routes crisscrossed the Sinai Peninsula, connecting Judea to Egypt and beyond. The Jewish community in Alexandria had grown into one of the largest and most influential outside Jerusalem, boasting scholars, traders, and religious leaders. Thus, when Jerusalem was engulfed in flames, it was natural for many Israelites to look southward toward Egypt as a place of refuge. The journey was perilous, marked by the harshness of the desert and the threat of Roman patrols. Yet, the promise of safety among kin and co-religionists drew thousands to attempt the trek. Some followed established caravan paths, while others braved new, more hidden routes in hopes of avoiding detection. Upon reaching Egypt, the experience of the fleeing Israelites was varied. Some found relative safety in established Jewish quarters in cities like Alexandria and Elephantine. These communities, though not untouched by Roman influence, offered a degree of autonomy and protection. The synagogues of Egypt echoed with prayers that mourned the loss of Jerusalem, yet preserved the hope of return. But the journey did not end in Egypt for all. As Roman influence solidified in the Nile Valley, some Israelites pressed further south and west, moving deeper into Africa. The lands of Nubia, Kush, and beyond beckoned, places with long histories of contact with the peoples of the Levant. Oral traditions in these regions speak of strangers who arrived from the north, bringing with them stories and customs reminiscent of ancient Israel. Over generations, these groups blended into local populations, yet maintained distinct elements of their heritage. West Africa, too, bears traces of these migrations. In the centuries following the destruction of the Temple, a network of trade routes known as the Trans-Saharan routes linked North Africa to the empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Along these routes, communities with Israelite customs and names emerged. The Lemba people of southern Africa, for example, have traditions, rituals, and even genetic markers that trace back to ancient Israel. In Nigeria, the Igbo people have long claimed descent from the lost tribes of Israel, their oral histories recounting journeys from the north into their present homeland. These migrations were not mere flights from danger. They were acts of resilience and adaptation. In new lands, the Israelites encountered different climates, languages, and cultures. Yet, throughout Africa, they preserved core elements of their identity: circumcision, dietary laws, Sabbath observance, and rituals marking the cycle of life. Over centuries, these customs blended with those of their neighbors, giving rise to unique but recognizably Israelite African traditions. Archaeological evidence supports these accounts. Ancient synagogues, Hebrew inscriptions, and artifacts bearing Israelite symbols have been uncovered in Egypt, Ethiopia, and the wider Sahel region. In Ethiopia, the Beta Israel community, sometimes called the Ethiopian Jews, trace their lineage to the ancient Israelites, maintaining a form of Judaism that predates many rabbinic traditions. Their presence is a living testament to the depth and endurance of the Israelite diaspora in Africa. The story of the Israelites in Africa is not only one of survival, but of flourishing. In some cases, these communities rose to positions of influence and leadership. The kingdom of Kush, which ruled over parts of present-day Sudan and Ethiopia, had strong ties to ancient Israel, as noted in biblical and extra-biblical sources. Queen Sheba's legendary visit to King Solomon is emblematic of these deep connections, as is the account of the Ark of the Covenant being brought to Ethiopia. Over the centuries, as new powers rose and fell across Africa, the descendants of the Israelites adapted. They became traders, scholars, warriors, and spiritual leaders. Their languages evolved, their rituals merged with local practices, but the memory of Jerusalem and the covenant remained. The impact of this southward migration is still felt today. In communities from Timbuktu to Addis Ababa, from the forests of Nigeria to the hills of Zimbabwe, echoes of ancient Israelite tradition persist. Festivals, songs, and rituals preserve stories of exodus, exile, and hope. In the face of adversity, be it colonialism, slavery, or modern displacement, these communities have drawn strength from their heritage. Remembering the journey that began with the fall of the temple, it is important to recognize that the narrative of the Israelites fleeing into Africa is not merely an alternative history, but an essential chapter in the broader human story. It challenges us to reconsider assumptions about identity, belonging, and the movement of peoples. The boundaries between continents and cultures are more porous than we often imagine, shaped by centuries of migration, intermarriage, and exchange. In the modern era, interest in the African diaspora of the Israelites has grown, fueled by advances in genetics, archaeology, and historical research. DNA studies among certain African communities have revealed genetic markers consistent with ancient Semitic populations. Linguistic analysis has uncovered Hebrew words and phrases embedded in African languages. And oral histories, passed down from generation to generation, continue to recount the journeys of ancestors who fled Jerusalem's destruction, seeking new life in the fertile valleys and bustling cities of Africa. These discoveries invite us to look beyond the traditional narratives that focus exclusively on Europe as the primary destination of the Israelite diaspora. They remind us that Africa was not a remote or separate world, but an integral part of the ancient Mediterranean and Near Eastern networks. The Israelites who fled southward contributed to the rich tapestry of African civilizations, just as they drew strength and inspiration from their new homelands. The story does not end in antiquity. Over the centuries, the descendants of these migrants faced new challenges: invasions, forced conversions, the transatlantic slave trade, and the pressures of modernization. Yet, through it all, the memory of their origins endured. In the Americas, for example, enslaved Africans carried with them stories and customs that some trace back to Israelite roots, infusing new faith traditions with echoes of ancient practices. Today, as people of African descent around the world seek to reclaim and celebrate their histories, the legacy of the Israelites who fled into Africa serves as a source of pride and inspiration. It is a reminder that the African continent has long been a place of refuge, creativity, and resilience. The fall of the Second Temple was a moment of profound loss, but it also marked the beginning of new journeys and possibilities. The Israelites who chose Africa as their sanctuary became part of a broader story of human movement, adaptation, and survival. Their descendants continue to bear witness to the enduring power of faith, memory, and community. In reflecting on this history, we are called to recognize the complexity and interconnectedness of our world. The migration of the Israelites into Africa after the temple's fall is not just a historical footnote. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the dynamism of cultures, and the enduring quest for home. As we look to the future, the lessons of the past remind us that our identities are shaped by journeys both remembered and forgotten. The Israelites who fled into Africa, their struggles and triumphs, invite us to embrace the full richness of our shared human heritage. Through their story, we are reminded that every migration is not an end, but a beginning. A chance to build anew, to adapt, and to keep hope alive, no matter how distant the homeland may seem. And if you're still here, maybe your soul just got touched, in the deepest place. At Tales of Black, every story is a ritual, a reminder that some memories are not written in books, but in bone and blood. If this story stirred something in you, share it with someone still wandering. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. And if there's a legend, a memory, or a haunting you want told, leave it in the comments. Maybe your story is the next one summoned in the ritual.